Good morning. 44 years ago, I sat where you're sitting now. I was somewhat nervously anticipating moving to Atlanta, Georgia, for graduate school, where I knew that many things, language among them, would be different from what I knew in Idaho and in California, where I had grown up. I think I had always been interested in words. I remember being fascinated by the fact that my Idaho cousins talked of tenny runners and jockey boxes, where I would have said tennis shoes and glove compartments. And when my family visited the Northeast when I was in high school, I was proud that my dad knew that if we wanted to order a milkshake in Boston, we would have to call it a frap, because if we called it a milkshake, all we would get is a glass of flavored milk. Later on, I was interested to discover that this same ice cream drink is called a cabinet in Boston and a velvet in Maine. Though I didn't know it then, those kinds of regional differences in language were to become my life's work. When I arrived at Emory University in the fall of 1968, I discovered that first-year students were last to register. And one of the few courses still open was called History of the English Language, fondly known by its acronym, HELL. In that course, the professor said that we would be required to write 3 papers, one on Old English, one on Middle English, and one on Modern English. But if we didn't want to do the one on Modern English, instead, we could help him do the interviews for a project called the Dialect Survey of Rural Georgia. Having 10 other papers to write that quarter, I thought fieldwork sounded pretty good. And it changed my life. The project involved going to very small communities, under 2,500 residents, finding 4 people, 2 black, 2 white, all older than 65, who were natives of those communities. One of each pair was to be relatively well-educated and one poorly educated. The idea was to test whether race or education had a greater effect on language use. As it turned out, education was more significant because in tiny Georgia communities, there was only one grocery store, one hardware store, one post office, one gas station, etc. So in practice, there was much more black-white interaction in those small communities than in most northern urban areas. Before long, I had practiced using the questionnaire that had been developed for the project, and I was adept at using the tape recorder. Remember that tape recorders back then used 5-inch reels and weighed about 10 pounds. I began to feel pretty sure of myself in conducting the interviews. Here I was, the young linguist and field worker, collecting important data for scholarly use. And then, I was interviewing an elderly black man, the well-educated person of the pair, in a tiny Georgia community. He was quite unusual in that, as a child, it was his duty to spend part of each day reading to his grandmother, who was blind. As a result, he was extremely well-read and had had a very successful career as a farmer. We were moving steadily through the questionnaire, and he was answering questions such as, what do you call worms used for bait in fishing? Or, what do you call the shelf over a fireplace? In this part of the country, it's usually a mantle or mantelpiece, but in Georgia, it can also be the mantelboard, the fireboard, or the clock shelf. Then at one point, he paused, he leaned toward me, and he asked, what's a little girl like you doing so far from her mama? My balloon was popped. I guess I wasn't such a model of a professional after all. I did continue the work, though, and several years later, those interviews provided the data for my dissertation. In addition to vocabulary, we also wanted to collect pronunciations, and that's why the tape recorder was essential. In this part of the country, we usually pronounce the words Mary, M-E-R-R-Y, Mary, M-A-R-R-Y, and Mary, capital M-A-R-Y, the same. But in many parts of the country, they are Mary, Mary, and Mary. And we wanted to take note of pronunciations like that. We also wanted to contrast pairs like horse and horse, H-O-R-S-E and H-O-A-R-S-E, morning and morning, and record words like roof or roof, soot, help, shrimp, nests, all pronunciations that can vary by age, geography, education, and race. At one point, my fieldwork partner, a woman named Grace, had some difficulty eliciting the word flour, F-L-O-U-R. The questionnaire simply asked, bread is made from blank. Her informant answered, well, there's corn, wheat, rye. After another attempt that didn't work, Grace decided to try a different tack and see if she could elicit F-L-O-W-E-R. She asked, what would you call a rose? The woman thought for a minute and then responded, well, I once heard that a rose is a rose, and I done forgot the other way it went. I've thought of that many times over the years, not just because it's amusing, but because, as a Denver Post reporter recently wrote in a review of DARE, quote, a rose by any other name may smell as sweet, but if you don't know what the locals call it, you may accidentally order a daisy. But it also reminds me that there have been times in my life in very different contexts when I done forgot the other way it went. I suspect that you, too, will find yourselves in similar circumstances. When you do, don't beat yourselves up. Ultimately, you'll either remember the other way it went, or you'll realize that it doesn't really matter in the long run, and you'll pick yourselves up and move on. At Emory, I first heard about the Dictionary of American Regional English, which was being carried out at the University of Wisconsin by a man named Frederick Cassidy. For that project, fieldworkers went to 1,002 communities across the country, found natives of those places, asked them the questions in a huge questionnaire, and sent the data back to Madison, where each response could be mapped on a special population-adjusted map to see whether it was regional. I thought, oh, I'd love to work on that project. But I was taking graduate courses, I was working on a dissertation, and during that period I got married and I moved from Georgia to Oregon and then to Maine. But when we were in Maine, I got a phone call from my Emory advisor saying that Fred Cassidy was looking for an editor for DARE. And that, as they say, is history. Since 1975, I've been working on DARE, and I'm proud to say that 5 volumes of text have been published by Harvard University Press. The 5th one, covering SL through Z, slab through Zydeco, was just published in March of this year. That doesn't mean we're finished, however. A volume of supplementary materials is in press now, and we're hard at work on the digital edition. One of the purposes of DARE was to record words that were going out of use in the mid-60s. If you can imagine what an 85-year-old person in 1965 would have lived through, it's pretty staggering. That person would have witnessed the rise of the automobile, the airplane, the telephone, radio, later television, general electrification, and the mechanization of farming, all tremendous changes in the way our society works. And those people would still have had the words for the objects and processes of a bygone era. So DARE, as a result, has wonderful maps showing contrastive distributions of, for example, double tree, single tree, swingle tree, whiffle tree, and whipple tree, all of which describe the pivoting bars that are configured in various ways to harness animals to a wagon. On the other hand, DARE was also interested in collecting the contemporary words that reflect our everyday lives through questions about time, weather, food, clothing, plants and animals, school, religion, health, disease, relationships among people, etc. There were more than 1,600 questions. So we have thousands of maps showing differences in the words people use for the things around them. For example, as I recall it, here in Caldwell, the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street is called the parking strip. But in other parts of the country, it's the parking, the parkway, the berm, the boulevard, the grass plot, the terrace, the tree lawn, the tree belt, the verge, the swale, and other terms as well. If you're a lover of words, you find this intrinsically interesting and worthy of study. Sometimes, however, people ask, who would ever use a book like that? What good is it anyway? I'm happy to be able to give some specific examples. For instance, a librarian in Cookeville, Tennessee wrote this: "Dare has come to my rescue on numerous occasions when I had no idea that an expression or word was regional. A good example, a library patron wanted information on dry land fish. We looked in every fish book we could think of, to no avail. As the patron kept repeating that this fish grew in the woods, and I couldn't imagine any fish that would grow in the woods, I finally got to wondering if it was a regional expression. And of course it was. A dry land fish is an edible mushroom. And it's appropriate that that letter came from Tennessee, for our map showed that 15 of 16 of the examples of this came from either Tennessee or Kentucky. But librarians are expectable users of a reference book. What about people in law enforcement? Forensic linguist Roger Shai, who's based in Missoula, tells of a case in which a ransom note left at the doorstep of the parents of an abducted juvenile said this: "Do you ever want to see your precious little girl again? Put $10,000 cash in a diaper bag. Put it in the green trash can on the Devil Strip at the corner of 18th and Carlson. Don't bring anybody along. No cops. Come alone. I'll be watching you all the time. Anyone with you? Deal is off and daughter is dead." Well, there are several interesting things about this note. One is that the writer spelled trash can, K-A-N. He spelled cops, K-O-P-S, and daughter, D-A-U-T-T-E-R. But he correctly spelled precious and watching, and he didn't forget the A in diaper. This suggested to Roger, the forensic linguist, that the writer was faking his educational background and that a fairly educated person was dumbing down for the purposes of the note. But what really caught Roger's eye was the sentence, "Put it in the green trash can on the Devil Strip." The Devil Strip? Where could he find out what that was? It isn't in the Oxford English Dictionary. It's not in Webster's Third or any other standard American dictionary, but it is in Dare, where it is defined as that strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street. And what's particularly interesting about this word is that it's found almost solely in a very circumscribed area within the triangle outlined by Youngstown, Cleveland, and Akron, Ohio. The list of suspects compiled by the police in this case included one relatively well-educated man from Akron, and when he was confronted with the linguistic as well as other evidence, he confessed, and the child was saved. So law enforcement is a wonderful example of a field that we hadn't predicted as benefiting from DARE, but which we're very pleased to have among our supporters. Another group is physicians. Imagine growing up here in the Northwest, going to the College of Idaho, and then going to med school in, say, Oregon or Washington. And then finding yourself posted to rural northern Maine, southern Appalachia, southern New Mexico. What would you say to the patient who said, "Doc, I've been rifting and I got jags in my leaders"? Or one who complained of having the ground itch, or dew poison, pip jennies, kernels, salt room. If you had DARE available, you could go save yourself some embarrassment by excusing yourself, quickly looking up these words, and going back with the appropriate questions and suggestions. Well, despite what I know to be true about the persistence of regional variation, it's a popular notion these days that American English is becoming homogenized. My response to that claim is, Yes, American English is changing. Language is always changing. But it doesn't change in the same ways or the same rate all over the country. So regional variation will continue to exist. And although some local words will get pushed out by national ones, especially commercial terms, many others will persist and new ones will emerge. The continuing vitality of regional English doesn't mean that when we travel across the country we won't understand each other. In most cases we communicate very well, but we are often surprised and delighted to discover that small differences permeate the language of our everyday conversations. So I urge you to keep your ears open as you go from here. Listen closely to the words around you. They will tell you much about the places you go and the people you meet. Ask about the ones that are new to you and celebrate their variety and creativity. Recognize that, on occasion, your balloon will get popped too. That's okay. Pull out another one, blow it up, let it fly. If you discover that you done forgot the other way it went, don't fret. In the long run, it doesn't matter. I finally feel that after 44 years, I'm qualified to talk about the long run. Now it's your turn. Ready, set, go, Yotes.